Caro Verbeek.
About 10 years ago, something happened to me that I will never forget, as it was the first and the last time I ever experienced anything of the kind. I was at an exhibition, and people were invited to lie down on an octagonal platform. It's an installation by the artist Ted. So I lay down, and the platform vibrated in a certain rhythm. And this rhythm corresponded perfectly to a pulsating sound and a flickering light. And I started noticing shapes coming from the ceiling towards my ears that weren't actually there. And I could no longer tell whether I was seeing, hearing, or feeling these shapes. My senses seemed to have merged. I made a drawing of it. It looks as though I have horns. This phenomenon is now referred to as synaesthesia, from syn, together, and aesthesis, perception. In the current definition, it's a neurological condition in which the stimulation of one sensory or cognitive pathway leads to an experience involuntarily in a second or even third cognitive or sensory pathway. To put it in simple words, you see sounds, you hear colors, you see letters in colors. In the past, this condition was not considered neurological, but rather cultural. And many artists were susceptible to it. And they thought synaesthesia could lead to a deeper understanding of an invisible underlying reality. And that's most interesting for us here tonight, the general conviction was that artists could give anyone access to these extraordinary experiences, these multisensory experiences. As a historian, I like to look at the past and see how we can use it today and in the future. So right here, right now, with all of us together, we'll look at artworks and experience maybe synaesthesia or at least multisensory experiences. One of the most famous synesthetic artists is the Russian expressionist Wassily Kandinsky. And when Kandinsky visited a concert in Moscow of Wagner's Lohengrin, he was astonished by what he saw. And I quote, "I saw all the colors in my mind. They stood before my eyes. Wild, crazy lines were sketched in front of me. And I realized that art in general possesses a power far greater than I had thought, and that painting could develop just such powers as music possesses." So these are the tones Kandinsky heard when he saw all kinds of colors that weren't actually there, but he experienced them. And music inspired him to paint abstract art. Colors, shapes, moving towards each other, away from each other, shaping dissonance and harmonies. Now, painters didn't just look at musicians. Musicians also turned to visual artists. In 1913, Jacob van Domselaar composed Proeven van Stijlkunst based on these abstract paintings by Mondrian, Piet Mondrian. And he wanted to emphasize the verticality of these compositions. And he did that by breaking down the chords into notes rising from low to high. And if you look at the sheet music, you would actually see the notes written low on the staff and going up. Let's listen to this music while looking. So you might have heard how both the painting and the music went up. And you might also think, this is a bit odd. I mean, why are we listening to music while looking at paintings? In museums it's always silent. But I wasn't the one who came up with this. Theo van Doesburg, the leader of the style, organized soirees like this, then projected images of Mondrian's paintings on the wall while there was live piano music. This music was being played. So what we're doing here is actually restoring an original multi-sensory context. Now we looked at the correspondences between painting and music, movement, direction. Now I want to do something different. We're going to look at images that will evoke other sensory experiences. And I call that the multi-sensory gaze. I see some people already responding to this image. This is Breakfast in Fur by Merritt Oppenheim. And many of you will have a tactile, meaning touch, sensation. But you won't all have it in the same place. So hands, please. Who feels it in their hands? Raise your hand. Okay. Who feels it on their lips? About 50-50. If you don't feel anything, don't worry. We're all wired differently. We all have different experiences. Now this phenomenon in which the eyes function as hands, being able to touch things from a distance, is historically referred to as the haptic gaze. But why does this particular object evoke such a strong sensation? First of all, we've probably all felt a cup before, and we all felt fur-like fabrics before. So in our minds, we combine this. Imagination is not just visual, right? Second of all, we are supposed to feel cups. We're supposed to use the spoon. If it would have been a lamp or a bookshelf that you're not supposed to touch, it wouldn't have evoked such a strong sensation. This is called affordance. The cup has the affordance to lift it. Now what happens if there are no apparent affordances, so in abstract art, but still there are other sensory experiences? Look at this painting by Wilmos Huszár, the style artist as well. Yeah, also a sensory impression here, some squeaking. It's a composition of horizontals and verticals in white, red and yellow. And Theo van Doesburg again described the painting as follows. What is the hammer for the artist? Its function, hammering. What is the saw for the artist? Its function, sawing. The artist has witnessed the hammering as a vertical movement and the sawing as a horizontal one. And by visualizing these movements, he forces the viewer to co-experience the hammering and the sawing. You can actually read this painting as a score for movement. Let's try it. Start at the top left. If you see a horizontal, saw. If you see a vertical, hammer. I don't see anyone doing it yet. Maybe you're a bit nervous. Try it. And if they overlap, try it at the same time. Hammer and saw at the same time. Now try to hammer and saw in your mind. Look at the painting, try to hammer and saw in your mind without moving. Even though you're not moving, your motor cortex is now actively stimulated. You're actually burning more calories while thinking of this action than while thinking of sitting in a chair. This sense that you're addressing now is called kinesthesia. You might never have heard of it because it's not part of one of the 5 classic senses. That's because it's an inner sense. We're going to do another exercise so you can feel this inner sense. If you close your eyes and you lift your left arm, and now you turn your palm towards your face, and now you touch the tip of your nose with your index finger. You look great, yeah. So, did you need your eyesight for this? You didn't. You only used your inner sense, your kinesthetic sense. Someone who was an absolute master of kinesthesia and who wanted to evoke kinesthetic experiences is someone who was already briefly mentioned, Piet Mondrian. We know Piet Mondrian for his paintings in red, yellow and blue, white, black, and with black horizontal and vertical lines. But he didn't want you to see those colors and those lines. He wanted you to see what's in between. So what's in between red and white? What's in between horizontal and vertical? And when I looked at Mondrian's art with a blind musician, only then I fully understood. Because she told me, well, of course what Mondrian paints is invisible. The same happens in music. When you play 2 notes, the tension isn't in the sum of the 2 notes. It's in the inaudible space in between. Something really clicked in my mind when she said this. And Mondrian also often compared his own art to music, but not just any music, especially jazz music. And what jazz music and his painting have in common is rhythm. Now, how can rhythm be visual? We can do an easy exercise so you can experience this for yourselves. I want you to clap with me. Maybe a bit soft clap. While we clap, we can see our hands, simultaneously hear our hands, we can feel our hands, and kinesthetically feel our hands. So rhythm is an incredible multisensory phenomenon in itself. And if we look at this painting by Mondrian, it's incredibly rhythmical. I developed a workshop called Clapping to the Beat of Piet, in which people learn how to recognize and reproduce the rhythms in Mondrian's paintings. We're going to do that as follows. If you look at the top tilted square, so the diamonds tilted square, and you count those from one side to another, you will find that there are 8. We're going to clap all around the painting, 8, 8, 8, 8, while following those tilted squares. Every square is a beat. And the corners, of course, count twice, because they're the end and the beginning. But we're going to do this to the music Mondrian listened to at the time, called ragtime. The music will start, and at my sign we'll start clapping while looking. So exactly 32 beats. Even if Mondrian didn't literally paint this music, he painted it to the same rhythm. But characteristic of any type of jazz is also irregular rhythm or syncopation, placing the emphasis on an offbeat or somewhere you don't expect it. Look at this regular grid again. Can you see the irregularity? In some places the lines are emphasized, they're thicker. So Mandarin places the beat in places you don't expect it, in an irregular way. And he doesn't just want you to see that, he wants you to feel that rhythm with your inner sense. In 1940, Mandarin moved to New York, and when he arrived, his friend Harry Holtzman immediately took him out and introduced him to a type of jazz Mandarin had never heard before, and that was boogie woogie. And boogie woogie had everything Mandarin was after: dynamism, optimism, and of course, rhythm. It inspired him to create his final work, Victory Boogie Woogie. Mandarin didn't just listen to music, he mastered another rhythmical art form that he also compared to his art, and that's dance. Mandarin mastered one-step, two-step, Charleston, shimmy, foxtrot, tango, and of course, boogie woogie. And when I started studying Mandarin, I asked my superior, can I please take boogie woogie lessons so I can better understand Mandarin's work? And he immediately said, yes, of course. And this is what my dance teacher, Stella Ponne, taught me. First of all modern dances, including boogie woogie, are extremely angular. And you always dance them to one of the four walls. So just as angular as the horizontals and verticals in Mandarin's painting. And in the following dance figure, you will see this perfectly. I will need a volunteer. Maybe you can do it. So spontaneous. 1, 2, 3, 4. And one time slower. Thank you so much. So this painting is so much more than an image. It's a dance, it's movement, it's music, all in one. And the next time you see this painting, you might feel the rhythm. You might hear the rhythm. So remember, the senses are never separated. The world is a symphony for our mind, bodies, and senses. Thank you.